5 years ago, in 2019, a church decided to start taking YouTube seriously for the first time.
And in 4 years, they went from 0 to 100,000 subscribers.
And now, in the past 10 months, they've added another 100,000 subscribers.
Now, you've likely never heard of this church, and you probably don't know their pastor's name.
And yet, they're seeing extraordinary life change online that is also affecting what they do in person.
So we needed to know more. They were kind enough to open the books and show us everything behind the scenes.
Let's dive in. Well, hey there, and welcome to the Pro Church Tool Show. We're here to help you and your church navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm Brady, your host. I'm joined as always by my co-host, it's Alexander Mills.
Hello, hello.
And today we're also joined by Josh Hale of Cornerstone Fellowship in Oklahoma. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to a good conversation today.
Yeah, thrilled to spend some time together. You have been very gracious in sending over all the amazing things that are happening in your church. And so we want to dive deep into that. You first sent me an email in March of 2023. So almost exactly a year ago. And in that email, you said it was in 2019 when your church first started taking YouTube seriously. I want to hear first about your church's shift in mindset, why you started to take YouTube seriously, and what you were doing previously at the time before.
I'll take you back to when I started working here in 2015. So I was fresh out of school, and I got hired here as a storyteller. So my entire job was to just do testimonies and to film long form. When I say long form, I mean 10, 15 minutes with B-roll, the whole thing. And at the time, our sermons were being uploaded to our website, and we had those running through Subsplash and into our our backup, which is our Vimeo account, because they do the lossless video. So it's great for that. But that was it. And I knew that we had great teaching, and you hear all the time from Pastor Allen. And so I was trying to think of ways when I took on doing social media and learning web design, there's got to be a way to get this video content out there. And nobody had suggested YouTube. And it hadn't even crossed my mind until I'd watched a video. I think you published it in 2019. And it was about why your church needs to be on YouTube. Now, this video, it was kind of a light bulb moment because I'm somebody that's been watching YouTube since 07, 08. I grew up on YouTube, right? So when I heard that and all the stats about second largest search engine, its parent company is the largest search engine, everybody across the board, all the demographics are on it, race, nationality, all that stuff, it doesn't matter. Everybody's on YouTube. And I was like, this is kind of obvious. We need to at least give this a shot. And it's one of those things that even if we were to go on and it didn't grow or anything, at least our local church would have something that they all already know how to use YouTube and all that. So I talked to Pastor Allen. I said, hey, I want to give this a shot. They said, sure, go ahead. Let's see where it goes from there. And I didn't just want to start doing the regular Sunday uploads. I wanted to do something to kind of give incentive to our people locally to check out the channel, support us on YouTube. And I asked around, just people in the church, people on staff, are there any sermon series or anything that would be of interest? And everybody was like, Revelation. So in 2008 to 2009, Pastor Allen did a verse-by-verse through the book of Revelation. It's about 66 lessons long, and it wasn't online. So I went back to our old hard drives, hooked them up to the computer, and was ripping DVDs, because they used to sell DVDs, so ripping from the DVD those sermons, putting them online. And little did I know that in 2020, a little thing called COVID was going to happen, and it was going to lock the world down, and a lot of people were going to start asking questions about the end of the world, because I think that's what everybody felt like was going on. So you marry the Revelation series with this crazy event probably the biggest event in our lifetime. And you have a recipe for YouTube growth. I mean, people started looking and finding those sermons and watching them over and over again. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it got started.
I have gone through your YouTube channel over the past year a couple of times, but for those that are unfamiliar with your church, tell us a little bit about Cornerstone, location, size, history, maybe biblical teaching style, theology.
So, Cornerstone was founded in 1987 by Pastors Alan and Lisa Nolan in the living room of their house here in Tahlequah. The first meeting had like a dozen people, and Pastor just felt called to found a church here in his hometown where he grew up, and they've been here ever since. He's been teaching full-time for about 38 years now. We're non-denominational, and when I say that, that means we're Baptist-costal because everyone knows that that's true. So that's what we are in the sense of, you know, the way that we handle certain aspects of the church service. But anyway, the teaching style, I was trying, because I saw you had asked me that question, and I was trying to think of a way to formulate like a good way to call it, because it's not full on expository where he's like, all right, 4 years through the book of Romans, let's go. It's not that. But at the same time, it's not entirely topical where we're going to pull 20 verses on anxiety and that's my sermon. It's not that either. So I was thinking it's probably, I would call it topical expository. So we're going to have sermon series where we teach on certain topics, but we're going to pull, if we pull from a verse in the Bible, if Pastor does in his sermon prep, we're going to stay on that verse and we're going to break it down so that everybody fully understands what God's trying to teach us through this verse and how we can apply it to our lives. So very much an emphasis on teaching the word, breaking down verses, and because of that, you know, some of our sermon series run a little long. You can't dictate how long a sermon series, you can't say, well, we're going to teach for 3 weeks on this, and then you start breaking down a verse and you realize, oh, wow, this is a lot deeper than I thought, right? So that's what I would say.
So we've settled on you being an ex-topical Baptist-costal. That's what we got?
Boom. There you go. Makes sense. Yeah.
That's so good, because I was spending some time on your YouTube channel this week, Josh, and that was my impression. Was I watched a handful of sermons and spent some time on your church website, and the expository nature of Pastor Allen's preaching really came across, not just in the content, but even in the title of the videos or the thumbnails of the videos before I even click through the video. A lot of them titled, what does the Bible say about blank, or what is blank? And they're not short form videos giving a short and succinct answer to that question. It's a long form sermon, like just shown in its form, the way it's preached at your church. And I'm so glad you brought up, I guess, just the timeline of how and when and possibly why your church experienced this growth on YouTube, because we talk a lot about this in the context of YouTube and why your church should be on YouTube. And that's why you're on the show today, is because your church is a perfect example of it. But YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, and people are not using it simply just to be entertained. People are asking the biggest questions that we have on YouTube. And so we go through this shared global event of a global pandemic, and we're asking all of a sudden, like, what does this mean in the context of my faith? Or the way you put it, is the world ending? And so when people ask those questions on YouTube, one of the ways that they're being served videos and certainly served the top results is by keywords. So keywords that you're putting in the description, in the tags, and certainly in the titles. So I guess my question is, what is your strategy for keyword research when it comes to deciding how you're going to publish these videos and how you're going to talk about them in those areas: description, title, tags?
So we have I have a few different strategies that I use. I think going into it, when I was kind of learning how to do YouTube, I wanted to keep things very plain Jane. And what I mean by that is it drives me up a wall when I go to a church website and I go to their sermon library and all the sermons are titled really cool, but I have no idea what it's about. Does that make sense?
Gravedigger.
Vague language, that kind of thing. Yeah. So that was kind of the approach was, if we're teaching on the Bible or a certain topic in the Bible, then that needs to be where we start from to kind of get people that are searching for that term to be able to find it. And when you go on YouTube, what's actually really surprising is how many aspects of the Bible, so like books of the Bible, topics in the Bible, characters in the Bible, even Christian living, discipleship, all that stuff, how many of those words that we hear all the time are not optimized for search. They're very low competitive search terms, and it's just low-hanging fruit that I think so many churches could jump on it and optimize their videos. So what I like to do is, and it kind of goes into some of the other questions, is provide multiple opportunities in a video to tell YouTube what that video is about. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. You put a sermon out there and you say, live stream March 6th, 1 p.m. Well, nobody's going to search for that because it's not relevant to their life, right? So what is the sermon about, the topic, and then provide it maybe with a hook or some form of intrigue, something that's going to pull someone in. You can do that in 3 different ways. You can do that in the title, you can do that in the thumbnail, and you can do that in the description. Actually, you can also do that at the beginning of your video too. So really, there's 4 different ways right off the bat that you're telling YouTube, hey, this video is about this. And so that's kind of the strategy that I think about is what is the most engaging aspect to this sermon that's going to make someone click. Because sometimes it is the topic that's being taught. Other times it's the application at the end, and usually at the end of the sermon. So that's really the strategy that we use.
You mentioned finding keywords that don't have a ton of videos related to them and how there's this low-hanging fruit. How are you finding these keywords? And is there a certain volume metric that you're looking at to denote to you, the search, the interest on the audience side is high enough here, but the demand is there, but actually what's the opposite of supply? There we go. The demand is high, but the supply is low. How are you finding the keywords that find that sweet spot?
So what I do is I've used several plugins over the last few years, and it's all simple stuff that if you guys are doing YouTube already, you're probably already familiar with them. So like vidIQ or TubeBuddy or plugins that you install on your browser, and then when you go to search a term, it will tell you, and you don't have to subscribe to. They all have paid plans. You don't have to do that. It will just tell you like a competitive metric, like. This is, if it's a high competitive word, so like something very broad like the word Jesus, that's a very competitive search term, and it's very broad because there's so many applications for that word. So you want to bring it down to something very specific. So what Jesus did in this context, or Jesus's miracle here, and make it more specific, and then you narrow that down, and these plugins will tell you this is a good search term to compete for. And the more specific you are, the better chance your video has to rank for that search term. And then the YouTube algorithm does what it does best, and it puts it in front of the eyeballs of people that actually will watch it.
Yeah, and the thread that you're always trying to, thread. Man, I'm off today. Jeez, Lord have mercy on my soul. Is you can have an extremely specific title and topic of video that is not going to reach too many new people because there's so little search for it. And so that balance is always, where is the demand relatively high and the supply relatively low? Mm-hmm. There really is no formulation where the demand is extremely high and the supply is non-existent. That would just not happen. Mm-hmm. And then the inverse would also be true, because it's just not going to be useful for you. So we're always looking for, in the content that we make, the problem for pro church tools is sometimes the demand is low relative to the supply. I'll be like, hey, I want to make a video on this. I think it's important. It's like, oh, no one's searching for it. And so, hitting that intersection is the key. Now, when I look at some of your most popular videos, Josh, on the YouTube channel, which are approaching, 2 million views, what would you say are some of the common threads that stand out to you? Like, hey, it's been a few years, 5 years now. We've reached 200,000 subscribers, many, many videos. These are our best of the best. Any commonalities that you can pull out of those?
So there are a lot of consistent themes. I mentioned at the beginning that our Revelation series was kind of what kicked off that YouTube snowball effect, if you will. But now that series is not even in the top. I think it's like 15 or 20. It's not even it has a lot of people that still watch it, but the common themes that I see, if you go to our YouTube channel and look at our top videos, it's questions about eternity. It's those essential questions that the gospel has an answer for: eternity, death, salvation, and the spiritual, supernatural things like angels and demons, and those kind of essential questions that at the end of the day, everybody's going to ask at some point in their life is, what's going to happen when I die? Because the mortality rate of humans is 100%. So I got to figure this out, and I have questions. So that's kind of the thread that I've seen across the board.
That tracks, because those are the topics that transcend the Christian faith. They are going to be universally applicable to every single human. And so getting back to the high demand, low supply, high demand, like Josh said, 100% mortality rate amongst humans, which means 100% of people need to answer this question. And many people, in fact, most popular social platform amongst all generations, when you combine them all, is YouTube. So we're going there to have those questions answered. You said to me, Josh, and I quote in an email, for a long time I tried to copy what big churches were doing to be successful. Then the light bulb came on and I realized that we should stop trying to be like them and focus on what we do best, end quote. Is that related to leaning into like your theology and like what makes you you? Or what were you trying to do in terms of copying other churches?
So it was a guy who had never really dabbled in YouTube, just scrambling and trying to mimic superficially what other ministries were doing successfully, meaning making it look like Church A or forming my titles to look like Church B. It wasn't until I realized, hey, we have a teaching ministry here. That's what we call it here at Cornerstone, is that we're a teaching ministry, meaning on top of evangelizing, we emphasize discipleship, taking it the next step beyond just getting saved, giving people an opportunity to dig into the Word and give them the meat, if you will, not just the milk. And so emphasizing that, words like detailed, in-depth, verse by verse, to kind of help tell people what these videos are for people that want to take that next step. Because most of the people that watch us online are people that already have some sort of experience with Christianity. Either they've been a Christian or they have a family member that's a Christian that recommended these videos to them, and they already know like essentials of the faith, right? And they have other deeper questions pertaining to the Bible or their walk. And so that's kind of how we see ourselves. And once I realized, like, God's blessed us with a great pastor that likes to teach in this way, that connects with people, why don't I emphasize that? And once I realized that, that's when things really started to grow. It's wrong to package Pastor Allen like insert some new young pastor, like, because that's not him. That's not accurate, So don't make him into something that he's not. Just let him be authentic, and and people love that. They resonate with him when we just let that ring true.
Right, which like challenges all the notions. Like, hey, our pastor isn't young. He doesn't dress like that. He doesn't have this level of like, charismatic energy, and he's not meeting with celebrities, and his church isn't filled with the first row of people that you recognize. Pastor Allen, he's an older pastor. He's in Oklahoma, maybe not the first place that you think like you're going to plant and start a trendy church. Although there are many, many affluent churches in Oklahoma, so perhaps that's an incorrect notion. But we were talking with the former social media director at Transformation Church, and Mike Todd. Mike Todd's probably like the top pastor that you could think of when you're talking about like young, trendy, high energy. And what Ron said, the social media director, he's like, you don't need to be like this to excel on digital media. And Josh and Pastor Allen are a perfect example of that because they're almost like the exact opposite. Older, white, long form teaching. Pastor Mike, younger, black, more like charismatic, not as detailed expository style preaching, both reaching the audiences that they can online by being true to themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that is true in so many different arenas of life that we resonate as humans, as social storytelling creatures we are. We resonate with authenticity. And we throw yellow flags or even red flags when we sense that something is inauthentic. And that I think we have this muscle, especially with the rise of AI and like artificially generated content. We're almost going through like an evolution right now of like exercising this new muscle to like test, is this thing authentic or not? I was reading the local newspaper yesterday, and there was like, and we're from a small town, like a very small town here. This is the Niagara-on-the-Lake newspaper, not the Niagara Falls one.
Nice.
And they are using AI generated images to accompany their articles. My mouth fell open while I was.
What?
Yes. And they credit Midjourney with the source of the image.
At least they were upfront.
Yes, but that's the thing. If they didn't credit that, it was an image of a creek with fallen timber in it, because the whole article was like, we need to clean up our creeks in this city.
But that wasn't our creek.
Exactly. And if they didn't have the source, I would have just assumed that it was an authentic image. So we're learning to exercise this muscle to test things. Is this authentic or not? And it's such a brilliant example and embodiment of the fact that like when you know who you are, when you know what your lane is, and you own it and embody it and do that in ministry, that's going to resonate with people because they know it's authentic.
That being said, one of the criticisms of online ministry, Josh, is like, hey, how is this going to help your in-person church? And how is this not just people from far away, other Christians just being like spectators for a different church? And so what has this online ministry meant to your in-person ministry in respect to things like volunteering, but also like giving? Because that's a channel that we don't really see acknowledged a lot of the times. Like, hey, our church, we would like to explore different revenue channels. We don't really, giving is not what it once was, or tithing's on the way down, or church attendance is on the decline, and so attendance by virtue is on the decline, and online can really be a levy for that as well. But I'd love to hear about how in-person has been affected by online, or how greater depth of spiritual practice and spiritual involvement beyond just views, things like volunteering and giving, has been affected by the YouTube ministry.
So the YouTube ministry, it's affected our church, I think, in a positive way. We have such a supportive body of believers, like one big family, and so many people have been encouraged and just blown away to see that, this pastor that they've known for decades and loved for a long time is now able to, like, God's using his teaching gift to reach other people all over the world. And the volunteer side, something that when I've spoken with our volunteers before, something that I tell them is like, don't underestimate what you do because of online. The things that you're doing on a Sunday are now impacting people, not just this one service, but for years, every single day from now on. You think about a camera guy, right? We have 3 cameras in the auditorium. Camera 3, he's all the way on the right. He's sitting there with a wide shot of Pastor Allen. Dude, that you operating that and that camera, that sermon's going to be watched hundreds of thousands of times all over the world. You have a hand to play in that. Even our switchers and stuff, because all of our tech stuff, we like to have volunteers. It's a good training opportunity for them. And that's what I like to remind them. My chat hosts on Sunday mornings, none of them live here. They are all people from online who, when I wanted to start implementing chat hosts on a Sunday service, I was like, well, the first impulse was to get volunteers here locally. And I thought about it and realized, well, our online audience is already acclimated to how we interact online because that's how they connect with us. So I reached out to our YouTube audience, and within a week, I had 4 or 5 volunteers that already knew what to expect. They already knew the way that we had been chatting online. I would just send them the things that they needed to paste in the chat, what they need to say, how to facilitate that. And it just kind of happened. And so far as giving, every church was impacted by COVID. And locally, when COVID hit, our giving locally did go down. But our online giving went up. And our online ministry really helped our church through that tough time because people were giving after discovering all the teachings and wanting to get connected with us. They were reaching out and wanting to help support the ministry. And something that we like to tell people is, if you're able, you should still attend a church locally. We really believe in that. And you should tithe to that church locally. But we do accept offerings and giving from people who watch us online because we understand there are a lot of people, and especially during COVID, like we were in Oklahoma, so we were one of the first states where we were back. We weren't on lockdown as much as some other parts of the world. I know you guys are probably on lockdown a lot longer than we were, but we would get messages. I mean, like people from Australia, my goodness, they were on lockdown for a long time, and they would tell us like, I can't go to church even if I want to, because none of the churches around here are open because the government told them to keep their doors shut. So that was an opportunity for us to help those people still feel connected and still be fed. And as soon as their doors are open again, they would let us know, and that's the other thing that's important in all this volunteer giving is to just be transparent. Talk to people, ask them questions, and they'll give you feedback. They'll let you know how they're doing, and if they're active in a local church or if you're the only one,
That's such a great testimony of just the myriad of ways and opportunities that these folks can take next steps in their journey with Jesus through an active online ministry. Like, I'm so glad you shared with us about your online chat host and that you recruited those volunteers from the online audience. I think that's so cool. But you know what, Josh, I'm a pastor as well, and I teach a couple times a month, but I'm a small local pastor. My sermons
So
on
far,
online. Yes.
Who knows? You might have 200,000 subscribers soon enough.
No, but this is what I want to say is that my sermons aren't online, and so I'm not susceptible to the haters.
Wow.
Every week there's 60 eyes and ears on my sermons, a little more, a little less, but not hundreds, not thousands, certainly not hundreds of thousands, and certainly not millions. And so I just want to ask you for a second about Pastor Allen, because every week his sermon is getting, at minimum hundreds of thousands of views, at maximum millions of views. And when you land on your YouTube page, like he's not hidden or like insulated by the church. It's like the YouTube page is his face on the header image. It's the YouTube handle is /Alan, what's his last name? Alan Nolan. And so it's very like Alan branded. And so my question is, and it sounds like you have a close enough relationship with him to speak to this a little bit, like how does he navigate the influence he has online, the eyes and ears, the comments?
25 years of in-person ministry, and then suddenly, the last 5, In a very different context.
Yeah. So how does he navigate this in a healthy way?
So there are a lot of things that we do because, YouTube, first of all, it was a happy accident. It was not something that we were expecting to kind of blow up into what it has become.
I got to pause you there though, Josh, because that's true, but
Yep.
you weren't just like uploading and saying, hey, we'll see what happens.
Sure.
You studied the best practices, you followed the best practices, and you were consistent. That's all that we can do. And then the rest is up to God. But so many churches will not even dedicate consistency and best practices. And then they'll indict social and be like, it just wasn't working for us. So I just want to give you a little bit more credit than you're giving yourself. Sorry. Please continue.
I appreciate that. But yeah, we get a lot of feedback now. And some of the ways that we handle that is we've created certain avenues for people to connect with us. We've also put in certain parameters because with people that are wanting genuine connection, the internet being what it is, you have a lot of people that have maybe more nefarious things, agendas, for lack of a better term. So, for example, on YouTube, things like spam or fake accounts. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a fake Alan Nolan replying on our comment threads, right? Those are things that we just need to be transparent about and let people know about. So a lot of times what we'll do is if somebody wants to reach out to us and they have a real question or a concern, we've pointed them towards a way that it's the thought process behind it is I want to encourage people that really want to connect with us, that have a genuine concern or a comment, and pry away the people that are just trying to troll or to they have some other intent. So one of those is through our email form, right? So on Alan's website and the church's website, we have email forms. Those go to our pastoral team. And then we also have volunteers that handle those questions as well, depending on what the topic is. We also try to include some piece of content in what we're giving those people. So not just an answer, but if you can give them an answer and a resource or an answer and a video, that can also help people as well. One of the big things that we did with our Revelation series was when that was originally preached, every Wednesday night people would come in here and they would hand them fill-in-the-blank notes. And you could actually have a full binder of notes for this series that you could go back in and learn. And so when we put those up, the first thought was, well, we're going to turn that into a PDF, put it online, and we're going to paste that link under every YouTube video in this series so that people can connect to this. And from that, we had people emailing us, hey, I hear you have Revelation notes, because they don't read the descriptions or the pinned comment that you make so obvious, but yet they just don't look.
It's just, you can only know that when it's true.
So wanting to find that stuff or having questions about that stuff. And it's really just creating like emails through or avenues through email or through social media, and also being diligent about replying to people that actually have a question or a prayer request, because I can't tell you how many times we've gotten like a comment on like a YouTube video and I'll heart the comment and then I reply and they'll be like, what? You actually replied. Thank you so much. And it means the world to them that you actually took just a minute out of your day to answer them or say, yes, I'm going to pray for you right now, whatever it is. So those are some of the things that we do to kind of help facilitate that. And then also on YouTube, filtering your comments, because as you grow, you get a lot of spam and a lot of people sharing links on videos. YouTube actually gives you that option to filter out like comments that have like website links and stuff. And that's really helped us as well. Because as your channel grows, these spam accounts, I don't know who they are or what they want. They see that and they want to latch onto that and try to ride your success. And it's like, okay,
I don't know who they are or what they want. Yeah, story as old as time.
Yeah.
The first email you sent me, Josh, I mentioned it was last year around this time. It was marking a celebration. You had been on YouTube for roughly 4 years, and you had eclipsed this 100,000 subscriber mark, which is amazing. You sent an email to me in January of this year, so about 10 months later, and it's, hey, we did it again. Now we're at 200,000 subscribers. So the growth in 4 years gets done again in 10 months. So a huge acceleration there. What have you've been noticing over the past 10 months that is different from the previous 4, if anything?
I was thinking about that, and I went back and looked at some of our statistics or our data in the YouTube studio. And some of the things that I noticed were, well, one, over the past year, a lot more concentrated effort in optimizing videos. But two, we had a couple of key moments that really kind of helped our channel snowball into that next 100,000. So last fall, or really, let me back this up. So it was around 2022 into that year, UFOs were trending again, as they do once a decade. And so I was like, that's odd. Everybody's talking about UFOs again. The government's putting out footage, and there's congressional hearings and all this stuff. And all this went on through 2023. Well, we don't like to jump on a topic right away. Like, we don't want to become like newspaper theologians, right? But this UFO thing would not go away. It had been like a year, and this was still a trending topic. Pastors were coming out saying, what do Christians need to think about this strange thing that's happening? And so we did a series on it. Pastor did a series called Don't Be Deceived, and it was a 4-part series just talking about the biblical perspective of how we should approach what are UFOs and aliens and what we should think about that. And that series, towards the end of last year, was his fastest growing series that we've ever had. And the second episode of that series has I think it has 750, 800,000 views, which for us, that's like a top performing video. And the amazing thing about that, at the end of the service, when we do an altar call, one of the things that Pastor Allen will say to our online people is, if you accepted Christ today, just type Jesus into the chat. And what I'll then do is, when I'm doing the attendance, is I'll go back through the comments and I send people a connect point, a next steps link, if they type Jesus, right? That video, to this day, every week, we are still getting people, like, you go through that video, comment after comment, Jesus, 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 over and over again, literally hundreds of people, if you take them at their word, accepting Christ because of this teaching. And I think it was that series coupled with even more concentrated effort on making not just past sermons relevant for today, but new uploads every Sunday, giving them the same amount of care and attention, that really helped us within this past year. Because if you look at our top 10 performing videos from 2023, 3 of them were uploaded in 2023. The other 7 are at least 2 or 3 years old. They're older videos that were repurposed. YouTube's algorithm caught them, put them in front of the right people. Because the other interesting thing is, if you look at our stats from that year, I think it's like 36% of our views come from browse features, which that just means like YouTube recommending it or YouTube putting it on somebody's homepage. The search function is like maybe 20%. So if you optimize a video the proper way, not only will it show up in search, but YouTube will know what it's about, and YouTube is really good at putting the right video in front of the right person.
I think this is a great teaching moment because it's easy to hear church did a series on UFOs and think, or posted videos with that as kind of like the lead, the hook, and be like, what does that have to do with Jesus Christ and Scripture? And I think what folks continually misunderstand is that there's a distinct difference between where you meet someone and where you eventually lead them to. And this is perhaps the best illustration I've seen of it because, admittedly, meeting someone on the UFO front, that's even farther than most churches would start, right? We talk about the universal matters of hope and purpose and family and community and finances, right? Like that's like the themes throughout Scripture over and over and over again. UFOs, that's that's probably one step further than that. And yet, again, taking folks at their word, because that's the best that we can do here. When you look at the chat, wherever Pastor Allen is leading those people to, irrespective of where they're starting, that's real. And truthfully, where they're starting matters in a big way because how frequently is someone searching UFOs and that then leading them to faith? The videos are probably leading them to conspiracy theory A or explanation B or government cover-up C, whatever it might be. And so people are searching for this thing and they're not finding anything in God. And that's probably a fine challenge to all of us to be like, hey, all truth is God's truth. And we could probably be more creative with where we're starting to meet people because we can always lead them to Jesus because Jesus is at the center of all existence. What'd you do on that thumbnail, though, Josh? Pastor Allen like looking at a UFO like with an exasperated facial expression.
I saw that video this morning, and that's exactly it.
Let's go.
Yeah. Well, clickbait is not a good word.
You see the way he's like, just groaning.
I did it for the Lord, okay?
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to teach on it, you got to be bold.
That's
right.
right.
You can't, and again, I always do, when you're making thumbnails, you got to do the zoom out test where you make a big picture, scale it down, and look at it and imagine if I was on a phone and I was scrolling at however fast I scroll with my finger, would I register what this video is about before I even read the title, before I even read the text in the thumbnail, just from an image standpoint? So, yeah, we did that whole split it down the middle thing with Pastor Allen looking across at like some ridiculous aliens that were just stock photos in Canva.
A little mid journey there for you?
Yeah, because you weren't able to get any real photos of them. Makes sense, yeah.
And Canva has a really good, their background remover is really good and fast for if you don't have time. You got to make a thumbnail really quickly. And so we just put that together, and I mean, the results speak for themselves,
It's amazing to hear how, just some insight into where your growth is coming from, because sometimes we're not too critical in the way we think about growth, and we don't realize that some substantial growth on social platforms, especially now with discovery algorithms and search-based algorithm like in YouTube for long-form content is like, a lot of your most watched videos last year were not posted last year. And so that's a really great insight for us to hear. And so I'm curious, how has your growth on YouTube translated to your other social accounts, whether it's Instagram or wherever else your church is active? Have you seen some carryover? It's because, Instagram is not suited for the type of content, the long form content you're posting on YouTube. So how has that growth on YouTube translated to your other social accounts?
So I'll start out and say, we try to put sermon content wherever people are. Granted, we understand that, like exactly what you said, Instagram or TikTok even, it may not be the best place, but I'd rather be where the people are than to just use that as an excuse to not get your message out there. So we do the best we can wherever we're at, but over the last couple of years, we have seen some of that start to transition over. Facebook is probably our biggest platform underneath YouTube. I really consider YouTube a social media platform as well, though, because especially the community tab, the people that are on YouTube are considered. I was watching I think it was Sean Cannell, he was talking about, a YouTube subscriber is the most valuable subscriber across any sort of social media platform that you have. So what that's translated to for us is we started a page for Pastor Allen, Facebook, Instagram. I just started a TikTok like not even 2 weeks ago. And his Facebook page was started like 3-4 years ago, and it now has 15,000 followers. 13,000 of those followers are within the last year. So if you couple that growth on YouTube, I believe there's a correlation between the subscribers on YouTube to the followers who are then going, oh, I wonder if this guy's on social. Or if Facebook recognizes what they're doing on YouTube and puts Pastor Allen in front of them on Facebook, or vice versa, whatever it is. So there's definitely been a correlation for us.
You had a bit of an exasperated response in the last question, which I deeply felt as well, because YouTube can be challenging because the script for what works is pretty obvious in a lot of ways, and maybe more clear than on other platforms. And especially for churches, but really for all creators, you want to like walk the line between what feels genuine to you, but then also you're like, but if I lead here, I'll probably increase my viewership by X percentage, and then like, for the greater good, like shouldn't I? How have you kind of managed that tension if it has been something that you've confronted?
I really don't think about it. It's something that we've talked about in the past, but at the end of the day, the church should be there to equip the saints and to give the church what it needs, not necessarily what it wants. Now, sometimes there's overlap there. Sometimes, for example, the UFO thing, right? So people would not stop talking about aliens for like a year, and then we decide, well, we probably need to address this. But sometimes you are going to have a sermon series that, depending on the topic, it may not engage as many people. But what you do, going back to consistency, is you don't treat that video with the assumption of, it's not going to perform as well, so I'm not really worried about optimizing it, or I'm going to take a week off. You can't think that way, because as we've seen with the past videos that YouTube all of a sudden just starts recommending to people, a year from now, 2 years from now, that video could resonate with a lot of people, and it could reach a lot of people. And even if it doesn't do what your most successful content is doing, if it's changing the lives of less people, it's still lives changed. And so that's kind of the mindset that I have whenever we're optimizing video content.
One of the trickier areas for churches on YouTube, on all social platforms, is how much should be emphasizing the pastor and how much should be emphasizing the church. If you emphasize the pastor, humans relate with humans. So that's almost certainly going to be the more effective approach. Some churches have some reservations because that can feel like, hey, we're elevating one person above like our church's community. And then, hey, eventually that pastor might move on. And then where does that leave us? How did you guys work through that? For clarity, the YouTube channel's name is Cornerstone Fellowship with Pastor Allen Nolan. So how did you land on that?
So the reason we went in that direction was purely from that standpoint, that SEO standpoint, where we got to a place where when you look at our search query and what people were looking up, Pastor Allen's name was way up here and Cornerstone Fellowship was way down here. Now, churches in the United States, you can Google, there's plenty of Cornerstone Fellowships, but there's only one Pastor Allen. And so, or Pastor Allen Nolan to be more specific. So that was kind of our mindset in making that change, of making him more apparent in the branding on YouTube, as well as creating social accounts for him, because being that he's a Bible teacher, we realized really quickly with all the local events and stuff that we have going on our church here in Tahlequah, you can't, your social media feeds would get congested pretty quickly if I was trying to give people a bunch of Pastor Allen content versus a bunch of local events and stuff that we have to promote, and you have to encourage and equip like your small groups and all the other ministries that are going on here. So the decision was made, well, it would be better if he had his own account that the online audience can take in and follow, that resonates with them, but that also gives our local accounts more room to breathe, because now they have more time and space where they can focus on what they're doing locally. And with the YouTube channel, yeah, it really came down to just SEO and search optimization, where, you know, if it was just Cornerstone Fellowship, all of a sudden in the search, I'm competing with all these other churches. Whereas if I put Pastor Alan Nolan at the end of that, change the handle, people look up Alan Nolan and he's going to be right there. So that's really what it came down to.
I don't know if that can be overstated enough. I mean, Josh, you've said it more than once in our conversation here that you're making data-driven decisions. So whether it's how to title your YouTube video, what to put in the tags, what to put in the description, what to put in the pinned comment, how to design your YouTube homepage, where to use Pastor Allen's name, it's all being driven by data that is free. Like YouTube, Google, they're going to give you this search query information to see how people are finding your content, what keywords are they looking to land on your videos. And so these data-driven decisions, and not just decisions based off feelings or gut, but like real hard data that is accessible to everyone who's using these online platforms, are turning into real success for you. And so I want to ask you a little bit about something I've noticed recently on your YouTube videos, a little change. For the first 10 or 20 seconds of a video, you are starting to give a little teaser of what's in the content of the video with a little overlay that says coming up. Can you tell us more about that decision, maybe how you arrived there, why you're doing it in the first place, and how that decision has been going for you since you've made that change?
So the decision to start adding, and what you're talking about is when you watch one of our newer videos, it will start out with a title or a clip from later on in the sermon, maybe an engaging or interesting part of that, and then it transitions into the full sermon. So the reason that we do that is for a couple of things. One, watch time is a very important metric, and it's one of those things that we really try to, or at least I try to keep that high. And Pastor Allen, he does have a high watch retention. I think our average, what was it? Let me look up. I can't remember all the numbers. Let's see. So last year, 2023, of the top 10 videos, your lowest watch retention was 19%, and the highest was 33%. So about a third of the video.
On videos that are like an hour long?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So he has a very good watch retention, which just that goes to speak to his ability as a teacher. But the hooks that we're putting in, what that does is it encourages somebody, it intrigues them to, if I keep watching, we're going to get to this interesting bit of information. It also literally increases the watch time because they have to get through the teaser to get to the start of the video. And then also for search optimization, it gives you an opportunity when you're editing your sermons to be really specific about what you want YouTube to recognize the video for. So, for example, and the video's not out yet, but going back to those UFO sermons, I have a compilation made that I don't know when it's going to come out of all those sermons. But the beginning of the teaser, the very first word of that clip that Pastor Allen says is the words UFOs and aliens. The first words in the title are UFOs and aliens. The first words in the description are UFOs and aliens. So you can use that as well as like titles and captions. YouTube recognizes all of that in your video. It can detect text, can understands what your speaker is saying, all of that to weight your video to point it to the right people that need to see it. And so that's really why the teasers are there, is to just help increase watch retention and then also search optimization.
Josh, anything you know now about YouTube that you wish you knew 5 years ago when you first started?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I have them written down. There are a lot of things that I do now that I feel like if we would have implemented back then, we could have grew a little bit faster. Not that growth is, but we are talking about growing YouTube channels. So for me, this is kind of a controversial thing. This is kind of a hot take.
More videos on aliens.
So get ready. We don't do YouTube shorts. And
That's not controversial.
okay, good. I'm glad. Because, you go on YouTube right now and you look up, should you do YouTube shorts? And there's a lot of people that say, do it all. Whatever YouTube releases, you need to be doing it and doing more of it. That has not been the case for our channel. I had YouTube Shorts on there for pretty much when it was announced that week that they let that feature available. I started making shorts. And I think of the shorts that we put out, the most viewed one was maybe 15,000 views. And what it ended up doing, because shorts take a lot more to accrue the same amount of watch time that one long form video does, is they really weren't growing the channel. They weren't helping. Now that's not to say that there are some channels where shorts do help and shorts do perform well, but it was a matter of allocating my time and energy to what's more important. So we do reels on social media and it serves a purpose there, but the audience on social media is looking for a different type of content than the audience on YouTube. And when you're dealing with somebody that's watching shorts, if that's somebody that's acclimated to watching a 60-second video, that may not be the same type of person that's going to sit down and watch a 40, 50-minute video. It just wasn't translating. It wasn't converting people into subscribers. It wasn't driving people to longer videos. They just kind of went out and people just kind of watched them. They didn't even interact with them at all. So it was decided, rather than have all these videos out in the algorithm that are not performing, that are telling YouTube nobody watches this channel, it was better to make them private and just make them unavailable and use those where they're more strategically geared. And then let me see if there was any other thing that I wish I would have known. Be consistent on a schedule. When I say, and I know that's like the stereotypical, everyone says, be consistent. Doesn't matter what it is. But when I say be consistent, it means if you have a schedule, just stick to it. Stick to it beyond just like be specific. So for us, that's like not just saying I'm going to put a video out once a week. It's I'm going to put a video out once a week on this day at this time. And a really helpful tool that YouTube supplies you in your YouTube studio is there's this little week chart that tells you when people are on your YouTube channel or watching videos. Use that. If you schedule a video at a time when most people are on, then it always performs better than if you just put it up as soon as it's done. And be patient with that. Don't just dump videos out willy-nilly, because that's something that I used to do when we started the YouTube channel. It was like, okay, we have all these old sermons. Let's just put them all out. And I would try to upload as many as I could a week. Whereas honestly, if I would have been more consistent with those, and given each video its time to breathe and time for the algorithm to understand what it is, they probably would have performed better. in the long run. And the other thing I wish I would have known is re-upload your sermon after the live stream. And that's something I just started doing recently. The reason for that is, like we were talking about with the hooks earlier, if you download your sermon, then you re-upload it, you add that hook, you add the transitions and everything to make it more engaging, and you re-upload it. Every time I've done that, that video has performed better than the live stream version did. And I don't have any concrete data to prove this point. It's just kind of a hunch that I'm going off of here, but it almost seems like when I have a live stream and I just trim it to the sermon, after that live stream's ended, or at least a day or two later, there's always this drop off. It's almost like YouTube. It seems as if YouTube is saying, oh, that live event ended, it's no longer relevant. Versus a video that's not a live event that always performs better. So those are some things that I wish, just starting out, I think really would have helped. Because now in our sermon library, I'm having to go back, and what I'm starting to do is repurpose those old live streams as videos and strategically placing them throughout the year so that they will perform better and reach more people.
Josh, we're so appreciative of your time, so much great wisdom shared here. If you want to check out Cornerstone Fellowship's YouTube channel, it's linked in the show notes. You can also just search Cornerstone Fellowship, though I would recommend instead you search Pastor Alan Nolan. That'll most certainly get you there faster. And thank you, as always, for your time, attention, and trust. We'll talk to you next week.